Welcome to Eat Right by George, the healthy cooking show, showing you healthy can be delicious. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about vegetarianism. We'll be preparing a delicious vegetarian recipe, tomato zucchini meatballs. But actually there won't be any meat, so they're just tomato zucchini balls with some garlic dip and some beautiful herb spices, mint and dill. So for this beautiful delicious recipe, which is going to be completely vegetarian, we are going to need 3 large tomatoes that have been boiled ahead of time and the skin removed. Then they were chopped, and then I tried to remove as many of the seeds as possible. So I took 3 large tomatoes, I boiled them, and then as the peel came off, I put them under cold water, sliced them in 4s, removed the seeds, and as you can see, all that's left is the flesh of the tomatoes. And you also want to remove as much water as possible because these are going to be fried for just a small amount of time in olive oil. So what I did was I took tomatoes, put them under cold water, and removed the seeds, and there you have the tomatoes. Of course, tomatoes are so healthy. They are a great source of lycopene and vitamins A and C. So one of the powerhouse foods you can be eating are tomatoes. And what better way than to combine them with zucchini. And I took 1 zucchini, I left the skin on, and I shredded the zucchini with the grater. So that's also going to be in the recipe. Just 1 zucchini, a large one. We're also going to have 1 cup of self-rising flour because you want the meatballs not to be flat, you want them to be fluffy. So we're using self-rising flour, and we'll be using 3 teaspoons of baking powder to also help them to not be flat because you want the meatballs to be light and airy. So the first thing you want to do is get your oil nice and hot. Now a lot of times when you're eating right, we do avoid deep frying, but we're not using any meat for this recipe. It's going to be vegetarian. We're not using any meat. And if you have your oil at the proper temperature, the food that you're frying does not absorb as much oil. So there really is a trick to deep frying healthfully. So if you're going to deep fry, the oil should be at the right temperature, which means not too hot and not too low. So we want it to be right in the middle there, which I'm going to show you in a second. So I preheat my olive oil here. I have my tomatoes chopped and ready to go. So I have everything in place. The zucchini has been shredded. I chopped my herbs. I also have mint and dill, which I love that combination. I have fresh mint and dill from my garden. And baking powder, the self-rising flour, and for garnish I'm going to be using feta cheese. So this is served with some feta cheese slices, a little sour cream, which has been made into a garlic dip. So first thing, you have your tomatoes. You're going to combine your zucchini. And as I said, try to get as much of the water out as possible, because this shouldn't be runny. You don't want to put something that's runny into a deep fryer. We're going to add our herbs. And being vegetarian, you have a lot of health benefits. People that are vegetarian, they tend to have lower cholesterol, they tend to have less heart disease, they're less obese, and there are different types of vegetarians as well. Of course, there are vegans who only eat vegetable products. They have no meat products at all. There's also lacto-vegetarians who only eat vegetables and milk products. And also there are lacto-ovo who eat milk, vegetables, and eggs. Our oil's getting nice and hot. I'm going to crack our eggs. The eggs also act as a leavening agent. Oops. 3 eggs. So this would probably be more for lacto-ovo vegetarians who are permitted to eat eggs. And can't forget our onions, about a cup of onions. Onions add a little sweetness to the recipe. If you have red onion on hand, that's even better. Red onions are a little bit more sweet. So far, so good here. My oil is heating up. Adding our flour and 3 teaspoons of baking powder. So we definitely need our baking powder. I have the oil on medium heat. Once again, you don't want a lot of you don't want it too high. You don't want this burning up on you because then they're not going to be cooked in the middle. So you want this to be on medium, and you can always kind of play with the heat. So I have my flour in here, my baking powder, mixing that. You gradually combine them. And the rest of our flour. Get this mixed and we'll be ready to go. We'll start frying them. Now one way to check the oil to see if it's ready is just put a little bit of the batter to see how it's going to fry. And you go from there. We'll take a little bit here and see. Oh yeah, this is ready. The way you can tell is that it already came right to the top. It didn't go sinking to the bottom. Oh yeah. Once again. I'm trying to get the liquid out. And they will rise to the top. You can make quite a few. I'm making them little mini ones. And you notice it's not splattering all over. You're being really careful. You don't want that. Now you want to have a tong ready to flip them. Oh yeah. You just turn them. This out of the way. And make sure to have a plate with a napkin to absorb the grease. You can see they're very light and airy. You just take your time turning them. And even your pets love this type of food. They can smell it cooking and they start barking. They're letting you know it smells good. Once again, turn them. It's a nice meat substitute. Sometimes you can have friends over and don't even tell them there's no meat in them. Tell them there's meat, there's tomato meatballs. See what they think. Show you once again. Now that we got the oil nice and hot. There we go. If you want them thicker, you can add a little bit more flour. But eventually, they do come back together, even if they're a little thin. This one's a little bit thinner than I want it to be. And all I'm using is a few ingredients. A few simple ingredients making this delicious recipe. Tomatoes, zucchini, self-rising flour, baking powder, olive oil for the frying process. Then I'm going to garnish these with the garlic dip. And you just get better and better as you're making them. And you become a pro. But eating vegetarian has so many health benefits. And it's great to experiment with different vegetables to make things. So the vegetarian lifestyle doesn't have to be boring at all, really. It could be a culinary adventure. You can try so many different things. I've even heard of zucchini pancakes. Those are really good too. You can make zucchini pancakes. Once again, they're very light, as you can see here. Make sure they're golden brown when they come out. Make sure to check out our Facebook page as well, on Eat Right by George. You can send us a friend request. We love to hear from you. And you can send us pictures of things that you have made as well. We'll do another batch here to use up the batter. You can make these small or big. And they're actually very colorful as well. That's the thing about our diet, it's so bland. It's actually quite colorful with the red and green. And of course the green from the zucchini and the herbs. I'll show you how to garnish these in a second. And as I said before, make sure you don't have your heat up too high or they'll burn up. They won't cook in the middle. You want them to be golden brown and cooked in the middle. So I keep it at about a medium heat. As you can see, I'm not playing with the temperature too much. Although what happens sometimes is when you do have the, when you do start cooking and there's a lot of ingredients in there, it does tend to bring the temperature down. So you have to wait a little bit for the temperature to come back up. I usually cook them for about 5 minutes, and I turn them when they're golden brown. You have to watch them so they don't break. They are delicious, that's for sure. And they're kind of more of a guilt-free food because there's very little fat and grease. As regular meatballs, when you fry them, you tend to have a lot of grease in them. These are very light and airy. Just make sure to use self-rising flour. You're not using the regular all-purpose flour. Self-rising flour already has some of the yeast in it. And once again, you can hear it turning up. As soon as they're golden brown, I flip them over. These I made a little bit bigger. You can make them larger. Once again, make sure you get extra grease. Put them on top. Now we don't normally fry on Eat Right by George, but since this is a vegetarian recipe, we're taking this recipe and using it. And we're draining the grease by using the napkin. We're getting most of any other grease that's on there. Flip them over. That's really about it, as you can see here. I'm going to show you how I finish them, how I garnish them. Let me get this off the stove here. Got to be very careful with the extra oil, the deep frying oil. It can be dangerous, so I want to put that aside, get that out of the way, let that cool down, and never pour it into the sink. Let that cool down and pour it into a jar, and after it's cold, and then dispose of it. But never pour it down the sink. So basically, for our recipe for the tomato zucchini vegetarian meatballs, we're using a cup of self-rising flour, half cup of fresh herbs such as mint and dill. We're using 3 teaspoons of baking powder. We're using a cup of chopped onions. We used 3 tomatoes that were boiled with the skin removed and seeds removed from the middle. After we sliced them, we took out the seeds with a spoon. We're using olive oil for the cooking process. And now for garnishing, what I like to do this on the side. I'm going to get another plate. I like to take some feta cheese, a couple slices of feta cheese, take our tomato and zucchini meatballs. They're so good. Line the plate. And I like to just drizzle a little bit of olive oil on top. Oh, dropped the cat there. Slipped right out of my hands. You can drizzle a little bit of olive oil on top. Garnish with some oregano leaves. And oregano with feta goes so well. Oregano just improves the flavor. And I also like to add a little of the garlic dip that I made. Put that right in the center here. You can dip your zucchini and tomato zucchini meatballs right into the garlic dip. So there you have it, a healthy recipe, vegetarian style, here on Eat Right by George, the healthy cooking show, showing you healthy can be delicious. And once again, didn't use too many ingredients, didn't cost very much at all to make this. It was very quick, and we're using all the food groups as well because we're using our vegetable group, and of course we're supposed to get lots of vegetables in our diet. Some associations say we should get 5 to 7. Others say we should get 7 to 9 vegetables. So this is a great way to get your vegetables in your diet. We have our dairy from the sour cream, the feta cheese. We have our grains from the flour. So there are different food groups in here represented, except we don't use meat at all. The protein is only going to come from your sour cream and your feta cheese. And of course, feta cheese is a lower fat cheese, one of the better ones because it's a soft cheese. So tomatoes and feta go together very well. So when you're eating this, you're combining it with the feta cheese. It's such a great combination, and great in the summertime when you want something light to eat. You can make these. Have this serve up to 6 to 7 people. If you're using tomatoes from your garden, that's even better. If you can get tomatoes from your garden, that will make this recipe even greater because you know how the fresh taste of tomatoes is just amazing. So I want to thank you for joining me here on Eat Right by George, healthy cooking show that shows you healthy can be delicious. Today's show focused on vegetarianism. Vegetarianism, which can be a very healthy lifestyle. People that are vegetarians do enjoy some great health benefits because they're getting so many vitamins and nutrients from fresh fruits and vegetables, especially tomatoes and zucchini. They're very versatile food. Thank you once again. I'm Chef and Nutritionist George Rapidas.